Good afternoon and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing for the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Elections. At this time, we ask that you silence all electronic devices and at no time is there anyone to approach the dais. If you would like to sign up for an in-person testimony or have any questions during the hearing, please see the Sergeant at Arms. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Elections. I'm Councilmember Keith Powers, Chair of the committee. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and introduce the members of this committee who are present. We have Councilmember Brewer, Councilmember Borelli, Councilmember Farias, Councilmember Salamanca, and we are joined by Councilmember Sanchez on Zoom, and I think we'll be joined by others in the near future. I'd like to also acknowledge the Committee Counsel Jeff Campagna and the committee staff that worked on the appointments that we will hear today. Chief Ethics Counsel Pearl Moore, Director of Investigations Francesca Della Vecchia, and Deputy Director of Investigations Alicia Vassal. Today we will begin. We will be holding a public hearing on 2 nominations for appointment. We will be considering the reappointment by the Queensborough President of Raj Ramprasad as a member of the City Planning Commission and the appointment by the Council of Dr. Mohammed Khalid as a member of the Citizens Complaint Review Board. Our first public hearing will be on the nomination for the City Planning Commission. By letter dated September 23rd, 2024, Queensborough President Donovan Richards requested the Council's advice and consent pursuant to Sections 31 and 192 of the New York City Charter for the proposed reappointment of Raj Ramprasad, a resident of Queens, to serve as a member of the City Planning Commission for the remainder of a 5-year term expiring on June 30th, 2028. Before I introduce the candidate, I want to review the functions and membership qualifications of the CPC. City Planning Commission is responsible for the conduct of planning related to the orderly growth, improvement, and future development of the city, including adequate and appropriate resources for the housing, business, industry, transportation, distribution, recreation, culture, comfort, convenience, health, and welfare of its population. The CPC is also responsible for the review of and has a veto power over all proposals to change the zoning map, the city map, and the text of the zoning resolution, site selections for city capital projects, all major concessions, proposed franchises, and revocable consents that the Department of City Planning determines would have land use impacts, proposed housing and urban renewal plans pursuant to state and federal law, sales, acquisition, leases, or other dispositions of real property of and by the city, and the granting of special permits pursuant to the zoning resolution. The CPC oversees the implementation of laws that require environmental reviews of actions taken by the city, in particularly City Environmental Quality Review, known as SEQR, by common name, State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, and the National Environmental Policy Act. The CPC assists the mayor and other officials in developing the 10-year capital strategy, the 4-year capital program, as well as an annual statement of needs. The CPC is also responsible for various rules, establishing the minimum standards for certification of applications subject to the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, commonly known as ULURP, establishing the minimum standards and procedural requirements for community boards, borough presidents, borough boards, and the commission itself in the exercise of their duties and responsibilities in ULURP, establishing specific time periods for pre-certification review of applications subject to ULURP, establishing the procedures for environmental reviews required by law, including the procedures for the preparation and filing of environmental assessment statements and environmental impact statements, establishing the minimum standards for the form and content of 197A plans, listing major concessions, or establishing a procedure for determining whether a concession is defined as a major concession. The CPC also has the power to modify any amendments proposed by the mayor to change the rules governing site selection and the fair distribution of city facilities. It also has the exclusive power to propose additional categories of land use actions to be reviewed pursuant to ULURP, subject to enactment by the council. The City Planning Commission consists of 13 members with the chair and 6 other appointments made by the mayor, 1 by the public advocate and 1 by each borough president. Members are to be chosen for their independence, integrity, and civic commitment. The appointments of all members except the chair are subject to the advice and consent of the City Council. CPC members, except for the chair, who serves at the pleasure of the mayor, serve for staggered 5-year terms, which begin the day after expiration of the previous term. For purposes of Chapter 68 of the Charter, CPC members other than the chair shall not be considered regular employees of the city. CPC members are prohibited from holding any other city office while they serve on the CPC. There's no limitation on the number of terms that one may serve, and the member who is designated as vice chair receives an annual salary of $73,855. The other members receive an annual salary of $64,224. Today, the Queensborough President requests the Council's advice and consent to reappoint Raju Ramprasad, a resident of Queens, as a member of the City Planning Commission. He has served on the CPC since his initial appointment in October of 2021. If you can come join us up front at the table, we'll ask you when you sit to please raise your right hand so you may be sworn in. We'll give you a second to get ready.
Do you affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your statement to this committee and in answer to all council member questions? Thank you.
Great, thank you. You can sit down. Turn your mic on, and we'll allow you an opportunity to make an opening statement. After that, we'll take questions from the committee and for myself. But welcome and congratulations on your reappointment. And you can give an opening statement if you please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Powers and members of the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Elections. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Udashram Ramprasad, known to many of you as Raj. Before I begin, I would like to thank Queensborough President Donovan Richards Jr. for nominating me to serve another term as City Planning Commissioner. If I'm confirmed, I will continue to approach this position with respect, integrity, and independence. It is truly an honor and privilege to be a
Can you
commissioner.
just put the mic a little closer?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
I'm gonna start back, or still feel nervous, even though.
It's all right. You're a pro at this.
I, like many in the Wellsboro, am a son of immigrant parents who came to America from Guyana seeking the American dream. They work hard to create the best life for my brother and me. I'm a lifelong resident of Richmond Hill, Queens. My dad worked at Liberty Line buses and later served in the United States Air Force. My mom worked in Key Food supermarkets for nearly 30 years and eventually opening her own grocery store in Queens, in which I served as a cleaner, cashier, delivery man, helped work the counters for nearly almost 23 years. It was there where I was able to develop a sense of community and learn the meaning of hard work and really appreciate the value of having money and not having money. My brother, who also worked there, served in the New York City Police Department before his passing. I was privileged to begin my architectural career at New York City Technical College, where I received an associate degree in architectural technology and then finished my bachelor's degree at Pratt Institute and graduated with honors. My architectural career led me to work for a firm in which I was able to develop an expertise in both zoning and code analysis. I also had the honor of serving for 13 years as a member of Queens Community Board 9, where I eventually was elected as chair. It was there I where I firsthand saw the importance of community and having meaningful input into important land use decisions, and this principle has guided me. During my term so far as commissioner, this background has informed me in my decision making. The City Planning Commission is an independent body, and the commissioners should be independent. While my votes at times may not align with the majority, I know my independence fosters public confidence in the planning process. Public service is at the core of who I am, and I will continue to consider each project before the commission on its own merits and vote in what I believe is in the best interest of New Yorkers. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Councilmember Brooks Powers and Councilmember Brannan as well. Want to ask a couple questions. One of the things we often hear as we deliberate on applications in ULURP, and as you guys are part of that process as well, is really how to best incorporate community input and feedback into those plans. We understand the complicated nature of working through a lot of these applications, but it's something we hear frequently. And I want to just hear, this is your reappointment. Can you talk about, in your experience, how the CPC can and maybe should, does, presently, but also other ways and opportunities that you might incorporate input and feedback into the process, and and any recommendations you have and that can improve that, as something we hear kind of frequently from folks.
Yeah, and I'm speaking from my days, remember in the community board days, I feel community engagement is critical for all these projects. And I do know that the city planning does have scheduled meetings that they meet with community board land use committees and the full board. But I also feel that it should probably also reach out a little further to local civics and other organizations. And, you know, I would suggest, there's only a suggestion, that besides using social media and outlets, I think that they should do more community events outside of community board meetings in terms of, like I said, engage with local leaders and local civic organizations to set up meetings so they can have more outreach that way.
Appreciate it. I'm going to go to Councilmember Brooks Powers because she has to leave shortly, and
Okay.
she is one of your Queens council members. But I wanted to just ask one or two more questions before I do that. Obviously, the city council right now is going to be voting on or having upcoming hearings on the mayor's proposal, housing proposal, which just came through the CPC. Can you give us your thoughts and feedback on that? You voted on it, and can you give us your thoughts, feedback on it, and talk a little bit about the City Planning Commission's, the outcome of the City Planning Commission. I know they made some modifications around campus proposals and other pieces of it, but I wanted to just, obviously it's a topic of a lot of discussion, including in Queens right now, and give us your thoughts and feedback on that, and clarify, did you vote in support or?
I voted in support, but I also voted when I voted because you have to vote on it on a whole. And I had issues in which I stated in my statement. I had main issues with the ADUs. I work in an architectural firm, and when we practice, we file jobs. And one of the big issues I had was, how is someone going to create an ADU in their backyard? How do you file this with building department? What code regulations are going to be implemented? Besides areas that are prone to flooding, which I know they're not supposed to be in those areas. But I had concern about the cost to the homeowner, the tax implications, the code use, like I said, and you know, I also had issues with the side yards or the yard requirements because you have a reduction and the waiver of parking. So those, I know in Queens especially, I have a two-family house, but I still need my car and I need to be able to park. I understand that this relaxes the zoning regulations to waive parking. I get that. And with the side yards, to me, I think limiting side yards from, say, 8 to 5 feet, I think is kind of not something I agree with. And I know I was kind of vocal internally by when we had these meetings. I always would ask them to give me a briefing or updates of what changes may be happening. That's why during my voting, I requested if council can look at these sections of law with the ADUs, with the, I should have it here, sorry, I wrote it down. ADUs, the yard requirements, and actually the parking restrictions, because I do feel that parking should still be required, in my personal opinion. And I feel it leads to a better, especially in Queens, because I know in Queens, a lot of the residents were very vocal during our nearly 14-hour hearing that we had. The other thing I was very vocal about also was the transit. I also requested that city planning put those maps on Zola so everyone has access to it to know, because I don't know if I'm in a transit zone.
You mean the transit-oriented development
yes,
part
I'm
of it?
sorry, yes. Both the inner and outer, because there's certain areas that are considered in a transit zone, but there's a train that's only running every 45 minutes, 48 minutes. And I can't imagine someone coming home waiting 48, 45 minutes and having, to commute that way. But my biggest issue, like I said, was with the ADUs, and they know how I felt about it. And to me, I personally said that I think that it should be removed, the detached ones, even the ones where they allow you to convert your attic or a basement into an apartment. I think the code requirements should be more clear, and I didn't see that, and that's what was my main concern with that, and that's why I was voicing my opinion about that. And
Understood. And just to clarify, you said that you think the detached ADUs should be
Yeah.
removed and potentially keep in the ones where you are doing
Yeah,
convert.
I think they need to be clear with the code, what state regulations are gonna be implemented. We have to worry about, you're inside a fire district, you're not allowed to have 3-story wood frame, which means if that's the case, then what's gonna happen? The owner has to sprinkler their house. Sprinklers can cost up to 30, 40 grand, depends on what you have to do, because you may have to bring in a new line coming in. That was the issue also with the ADUs. How's the sewer connection gonna happen? Are you connecting through the house? Where's the code? Where's the section of the law that says you can do that? I was also worried about the fire department regulations on this. I know they said they had a lot of meetings, but I don't know.
Can I ask a follow-up
Sure.
question? This is like a zoning proposal around
Yeah.
and I appreciate the nuances because this is a complicated conversation we're
Yeah,
all
yeah.
having right now. Is the belief that there won't be a DOB or FDNY regulations that will follow to then answer those questions? Is that the concern, that there won't be, or because it's my sense that like if we authorize them, then the DOB will be required and the fire department and other agencies will be required to actually take action to address some of those issues.
I think there will be a regulation. I just don't know how fast the city agencies will work together to make sure a plan like this is successful. And I know they were anticipating just a small increment of additional dwelling units through these ADUs, but it would be great to see that sections of law already been implemented for this, right? Like right now, because if this does get approved in December and they implement in January, and people in the professional community start filing, I just don't know how DOB will react, how they review the applications. That
Okay.
was one of the things I was bringing up with them.
Got it. And one last question, and then I'll hand it over to colleagues. I understand your concerns with the plan. Can you talk about, you voted in support of it, so
Yeah.
can you talk about the items in there that you support and what parts of the plan that led you to ultimately vote in support of it?
Yeah, the whole idea, I know we need housing, and I know besides the amount of homeless that are in the city of New York, which is, I remember when I was in the community board, we were talking about 60,000, then we went up to 70, then 80, 90, then you're talking about families, children, and I think there needs to be an opportunity to create more affordable housing, and I truly hope it's more affordable, because one of the things I'm always concerned with is these jobs get approved, and I don't know what really gets built out there. And it's a big concern, as you can see by the number of people that's out in the street. But I do feel like the plan can help generate additional affordable housing and create an opportunity, both, I guess, in the private sector for developers building and people to have an opportunity to hopefully find new homes within the community that they live in.
Got it. Appreciate it. I'm going to go over to Councilmember Brooks Powers to ask a few questions.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony and your service. I looked at your attendance record, and it's quite stellar, which
Oh,
shows
thank
your commitment to the commission.
I try to make sure I move everything around to make sure I'm there, and it's something that's of great importance. Even with the community board, is the same way. It's
No,
across the board.
absolutely. And as a Queens person myself, and seeing a lot of development in my district, obviously, appointment and reappointment in this role is critical for the future well-being of our districts there. And so I know you mentioned like you don't always vote the same way as the full commission. Can you give a couple of examples of when you may have voted differently and what was the reason for that?
Sure.
And then I'm just gonna ask, I'm not on the clock. Go ahead, and I'll ask my next question. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I give you borough-based jails, I voted no. Queens, the two bridges, I also voted no. Queens Innovation, I voted no. Queens Innovation, I voted no because initially I thought they could have put more affordable housing in the project. It was multiple blocks that were involved with the rezoning, proposed rezoning, and I know they were back and forth with the applicant, and, I know they always, you always hear the term, "I'll get back to you," or, we're gonna look at this a little further. But at the time of the voting, I didn't see any change that was made with regards to the number of affordable that they were gonna increase. So for me, in my heart, I couldn't do it, so I voted no, and it ended up passing on the commission, that one. Same thing with Two Bridges. I actually just got on the commission, literally. It was on maybe a few weeks. But the same thing, I was watching my video on that one, and I felt the same way. And at that one, I felt like, once again, I usually, when I look at the reports that we get, I look at what the community board states. If it's not full community board and it was a land use report, look at that, and listen to the testimony. I mean, there have been many times when people come in. I bought my books because normally what I do is I write down everyone's name who's testifying, and I jot down little notes. And the one for City of Yes, by the way, I have a different book for that because there was so many. But I thought it's important because, especially when you're not from the neighborhood or that community, it's important to understand where that person is coming from. And another thing I always like to do is I try to go to the site prior to the vote just to see it for myself, to see what's happening. Just because you see it on paper doesn't mean you know it. Just because you read it in newspapers doesn't mean you know it. You have to go there. And, luckily, not luckily, but because I feel like I do that, I feel like a little bit more better in terms of I see what the department's point of view is on it, but I got to get it from my own perspective. And the only way to do that is to do it on my own by going there.
Also, just in line with the votes that you've taken, there have been a number of actions taken in the 31st Council District, particularly in the Rockaway community. And I always think it's important for us, like after we make decisions, to take a look back to see how those decisions may have ended up. If there were things that you would have maybe have looked to see done differently, or if you think it was perfect. I'm curious to know about some of the developments that took place in Rockaway in particular, what your thoughts are on them, and I hear you in your commitment to housing, but with CPC you have a unique opportunity to look beyond just housing, but looking to a full community development. So I'm just trying to see where those gaps may have been during those votes.
Right. It's a great question because one of the things I know I've also mentioned internally is I think we should get updates on projects that were approved. That was one of my concerns, was it gets approved, but does it actually get built? And it's not only in the Rockaways, it's citywide. And I know some do get built, some probably get sold to another developer, and because we're only approving the zoning, right? And whenever they show us this image, it's not really necessarily what's going to get built. And when I look at a lot of these projects, especially in the Rockaways, I know that there's always, obviously the flooding is totally in a flood zone. I know there's a big issue with emergency services and healthcare. I would also look at the schools, the number of seats for children and families, because I take it from my perspective with my nieces. I wanted them to get into a school. I wanted them to get into a charter school. They couldn't get in. All the seats were taken, and just as an example. So I think back about that too. And I really wish, I can't answer specifically on a particular project because afterwards we don't go back to see that unless I read something in the papers, or if it's actually in my community, then I'll know it better.
But to that point, like some of these votes took place like maybe a year or so in between one another. So did you ever look to say, okay, well, we just voted for this large project, and then now we have another large project. Maybe we should add in transportation or something with infrastructure, or to your point, schools or healthcare.
And I've mentioned that on several applications in the past. When something like that comes up, what is the developer going to do to improve the infrastructure, or is it something that I guess they're in negotiation with the city, whether it's DEP or DOT? And a lot of times we hear the same comment that we're in talks with them or they're aware of it. I don't necessarily know what happens after that, and that's something you bring up a great point with that, because a lot of these projects, and Queens Innovation was another one where I also brought that up, because this is major constructions on city blocks, and it will have a major impact on all the existing residential, commercial, all the residents in that community. We already know the infrastructure, especially in Queens, the DEP, the sewer system is overloaded. As we can see, by every time we get a major storm with the flooding, it's a complete nightmare. I can't even speak to how they would probably correct that, but it's something that needs to be acknowledged, and DEP, I would hope, is able to rectify as best of their ability.
And to that point, with the City of Yes, it's gonna, as you mentioned before, it's gonna lighten some of the the guidelines around development, and in light of the infrastructure dynamic in Southeast Queens broadly, not just even in my district, but Southeast Queens that has high water tables, coastal flooding. What do you, because the commission approved the city of Yes, how will the city of Yes be able to address that dynamic in Southeast Queens? Did the commission make any amendments to it that would take into account certain communities? And I know you mentioned it doesn't include certain flood zones, but
Right.
some of the flood zones are not comprehensive. So it may have like Edgemere on there, but it doesn't have Far Rockaway or Rosedale. So all of the communities are not reflected, or even I would argue in Councilmember Williams' district where people lost lives about 2 years ago in Hollis, now in Councilmember Lee's district. How are we going to protect that? Because when we loosen the regulations, the council members individually, we no longer will have a say on some of this development.
Right, and I know they were saying that those, well, first of all, at Rosedale, I'm glad you mentioned that. We were doing a job in the office where it's not in a flood zone. They were excavating, they hit water at 4 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't show up on the boring, they took holes at different locations, so I understand in terms of, just because you're not in a flood zone doesn't mean you're not gonna have flooding or the water
That's why I
table's
said
not
high water tables, because we
And,
have
and
that.
it's a
Mhm.
great point, and I feel like that needs to be looked at further, 100%, because I do feel that flood zone map should have, I don't know, should be investigated further to see locations like Rosedale, like I was just mentioning. St. Albans too had sections with high flooding,
Adderley
and-
Park.
and yes, and Deer Park, and all the Rockaways. I'm trying to think of another, even Ozone Park as well. It's just spread out, but maps don't capture that, and that can be a real concern, as you're mentioning. And I just hope that the city agencies can work with, I guess, FEMA to update these maps to properly reflect that.
But in you all took a vote on
Yeah.
City of Yes. Did the commission put anything in there that's going to address that or ensure that there is, some framing so that we don't further threaten the resiliency of these communities?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing any modifications to that section. I would have to look back in my notes to confirm that,
Okay.
but I don't recall seeing that.
Home ownership is a critical pathway to build generational wealth for families in Southeast Queens and across New York City. What responsibility does CPC have to advance the development of new home ownership opportunities?
Yeah. Well, home ownership, and I think back to like my family, my parents, they worked 3 jobs to get the house that we have today, and my parents are living with me right now, and it's the greatest thing. And I feel like we need to create an avenue, a stronger avenue, to create more affordable housing. And it's funny. A while back I went on Housing Connect just to see how to navigate that application. I'll tell you the truth, I struggled.
Oh, we can have another conversation about that.
I struggled because I was thinking about, we are creating affordable housing, and people, I know they flood the system to try to apply, but when I look back on it, I think it's very difficult to navigate and try to apply for a home in your community. And I do feel like we need the city, in general, I'm speaking, I guess, out of terms, because I think the agency needs to really look at how to make that easier for homeowners, for every everyday person to be able to go through it, whether or not, and maybe they can do more seminars, more or create more events to help train and teach people how to navigate and how to create, how to go in and try to find a place within your community.
And I hear you, and I sense a bit of shift of burden towards the city agencies, but I would argue that CPC also has a responsibility to ensuring and envisioning pathways to homeownership, especially when developers are coming to CPC, because
Right.
a lot of times when they come to me, they say, well, we've gone in with this as an idea, and here's what we got back in terms of how we get prioritized. So CPC is shaping the outcome of these applications,
Right.
and it may not be in alignment of what the community necessarily wants.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's looking to rightfully build housing, which we need, and I'm in support of. But it unfortunately does not take into account the type of housing that is needed, where people want pathways to home ownership, being able to afford it, because being able to have the mixed household incomes is important too, because we have people who are civil servant workers that don't make low enough for deep affordability, but don't make enough for market rate. How do we address that? And then again, going back to the resiliency and the climate change that exists today, it's not even like in the future anymore, it's here. And I think CPC has a role to play ensuring that our infrastructure is future proof. So like sitting there and approving the city of yes, but knowing that the infrastructure is not going to support certain development, I think CPC missed an opportunity to be able to make those modifications. But it now shifts the burden onto the council. But it is refreshing to hear your perspective, because I do get a sense that you do look at it in a granular way like that. And so, you know, likely you'll be reappointed, but I hope that you're taking in these comments as you move forward in that role, and working closely with the council members too, because we're on the ground, we're talking to the community boards and the members of the community, so that it's not that we have to wait till it gets to the council to address these things. It could be addressed, and then we could continue to move that needle when it gets to the council stage of this conversation.
And I appreciate those comments too, because I really wish, I know, when I look at these, first of all, when the project comes to us, I don't have any, you know, we don't know what the price spends probably a year, I guess, going through the whole back and forth with the CPC before it comes to us for certification. But I do know there have been times when the project, when it's certified and it goes through the EULA process and they come for a hearing and they tell us about their project, there have been many times where well, I know I've pushed back and asked for additional information, whether it's more affordable housing, what are you doing in terms of, well, infrastructure was another thing I asked on a lot of the projects. I'm just trying to think of other projects I can just call out
And when I
to
talk
you.
about infrastructure, just to clarify, I don't only mean like the roads and the sewers,
No,
I mean
yeah,
like
yeah.
health too.
Yeah, help, that's another big thing. And that was another issue with say, Queens Innovation. That changes the landscape of a community. And Two Towers would also change the landscape of the community, because I think that was like 2,700 units.
Well, imagine Rockaway. We
And
have
Rockaway
Auburn
was another one.
East.
Right,
We
right,
have
Auburn East was a
Edgemere
huge project.
Commons.
Yes.
We have a lot that's going on right now, and no trauma
And
facility.
I was
there.
about to say, I think it was only the St. John's one, but that's
It's not a trauma hospital.
Right, that's not trauma. And you know, and it was when I was looking at the questions, I was thinking back to years ago. In Queens, they used to have Mary Immaculate Hospital that closed, St. John's Hospital that closed,
Peninsula
and then
Hospital's closed,
Peninsula
yeah.
was the third one I was going to say. And then you know, now Elmhurst gets overwhelmed, Jamaica Hospital gets overwhelmed,
Yes.
and to me that should raise a red flag, because this should be a top priority to be looked at and developed at schools and hospitals. For me,
Yes.
is what I'm thinking.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Raj. I appreciate your candor today. I have some questions. Well, I have some questions from the majority leader who had to step out that I wanted to ask, but some of them are, why are we getting all Sonic Youth over here? But some of these are relevant to my district as well, so I told her I'd ask. So there's been a number of instances in which city planning has approved major neighborhood rezonings based on environmental reviews that fail to accurately estimate the reasonable worst-case development scenarios. Most notably, CPC upzoned downtown Brooklyn and LIC with the expectations that new construction would consist of office buildings, but residential use was also allowed. The result was a major influx of new residents without any required environmental mitigation or infrastructure investment. So given CPC's failure to estimate and mitigate environmental impacts on large neighborhood rezonings in the past, why should my colleagues and I and the public they represent have the confidence in the CPC in the CPC's environmental review process as it relates to the City of Yes application.
Well, with regards to that, I believe, I think that, I would assume this, before the proposal came to us, and before it was certified, that it had gone through the process of, the whole secret process in terms of evaluating for, and you gotta get my other sheets out here, sorry. Apologies. So I was going back through some of these things, some of these lists of items there. I feel like before I would assume, because I wasn't part of that process there, but I would assume the agency has a role in making sure that all these items are evaluated prior to putting out a proposal like this and seeing what the impacts are. And I understand from the community's point of view when they see projects like this. And I would hope that they would, just trying to find the right words to say, because it's something that I wasn't, I don't know what the inner outs was of before it hit us, but I do know that when the projects are introduced, that I know myself, along with other fellow commissioners, question some of the proposed zoning areas or proposed projects that that may impact certain communities. I'm just trying to find one last comment that I wanted to say about that. I'm sorry, because I did write stuff down about hitting on one of the questions you just asked. Pardon me a second. Because I know I wanted to say something about that directly. I mean, the only thing I can really wrap up and say with that is that I hope that I don't want to say that's not right here. I don't believe in the one-size-fits-all process. I do believe that every community should be looked at individually, and the agency should take it upon themselves with the staff that they have to closely investigate every single community before, especially for a proposal like this, and see what they're proposing, how much of an impact it's going to have for them, for the communities.
So, and this is related. In your pre-hearing questions, you wrote about your vote against the Queens Resiliency Project based on a lack of important information in the project summary. So could you discuss that applications and your deliberations with your colleagues about the lack of a project summary?
The Queens Innovation, that one there was primarily because of not enough affordable housing for everything that they were getting, because they were rezoning, I believe it was 3 city blocks roughly, near Long Island City, Sunnyside area. And, they were creating open space for the community, but I also wasn't comfortable with the type of open space that it was. I know they had multiple designs come up, and at the last second, 11th hour, they came up with another design based upon feedback or pushback that I know some of the commissioners had. But at that point, when I saw it, it was, says you could have done this earlier in the process. So for that, that's one of the reasons, and the affordable number of affordable that they were proposing was not, in my opinion, something. I thought they could have gone higher with the numbers on that one. The most recently, the last one I voted against was 962 Franklin, which is in Brooklyn, across the street from Botanical Gardens. That one there, they were proposing, it was R6 zone. They were going for R8A, 14 stories across the street. I wasn't comfortable with the height. I also wasn't comfortable with in terms of the feedback we were getting from the applicant, in terms of his stating that he was meeting with all the local parties. So that one I felt, I didn't feel it was right. So I actually, the agency came up with 3 different scenarios, and I decided the R7A was probably more equivalent. That it was lower, 10 stories, which wasn't casting, and that one there was about casting the shadow, but it was also about a number of affordable units and what was really affordable. And that community, they're looking for more affordable housing, and the developer, I felt, was doing the minimum at that point and not really going above that.
Do you consider the environmental review, environmental impacts, and how that relates to a development project, is that as consequential to your decision-making as the affordable component?
It is, and you know, there've been times where I look at that and read the report, and you know, it's funny, when they give us these packages, they give us, you know, whether it's on Friday, the day before, it's like, whatever it could be, each section can have 150 pages. But when I look at the environmental reports on a lot of these projects, especially if I know it's an area that's, whether it's flood prone or whether it's, you know, doesn't have a lack of schools, is how many affordable units have been generated from a certain community, because I know there are certain communities that are carrying the weight of others, but plays a huge role, along with the testimony from the public as well, of course, and listening to what the applicant, their perspective on the project as well.
So, would you propose a CPC rule that the UDAP applications will not be certified as complete or approved unless they are accompanied by a project summary that includes all the info that the UDAP statute allows us to?
Well, I don't know if I should speak on that. I would probably leave it up to the electeds to help shape or modify.
But do you think it's a good
that
idea?
rule. I think it's something that can be looked at. I mean, it should be looked at. I don't know if I should. I believe in full transparency with that, and I always believe in, you know, getting it out to the public and getting feedback, and that it shouldn't just be one, you know, one uniform, like one agency saying, yes, this is it. Don't, you know.
But is that a rule that you would propose?
I wouldn't.
It wouldn't be. We don't
Yeah.
have CPC would have.
You know, it was something I would definitely have a discussion with and tell them. I think it's something that should be looked at. I mean, I can get back to you and give you specifics, but you know, that's
Okay.
my suggestion.
Yeah, look, I appreciate your candor. I mean, I think for those of us in the outer boroughs especially, there's always a concern around the infrastructure that we take for granted underground, and what what all this new development means, and not that should be a hindrance, but it should absolutely be part of the decision-making process. So I appreciate your thinking around that.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thanks.
Just so you know, all 5 boroughs are concerned about infrastructure. I just want to point that out. My question, I certainly agree with you. Not everybody does on the affordable housing. I represent a very, very dense district, perhaps the densest in the United States of America on the Upper West Side. And so the question is, how do you both get affordable housing without just getting height? And it seems to be that in Manhattan, for my many years, nobody wants to give anything but a small percentage for more FAR, et cetera, as opposed to, come on, some subsidies, something else that brings more affordable to a transit-rich, school-rich, convenient location, which needs to be integrated. So those conversations this is a zoning plan. It's not a housing plan. The city, just call it what it is. So my question is, do you see any way of making it a housing plan? Do you see any way of having some more discussions, maybe out of silos? I don't know. You, to your credit, you have articulated, I think, both what the community wants to hear in terms of somebody who's representing them, and also some of the concerns that we're all trying to face. Queens and Manhattan are very different, so I don't want to, we have different problems. We all need the housing. So I don't know, is there any way that it could be shaped to have more affordable housing? That question may not be answerable, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how to really answer that, other than I always ask the question, is this the most that we can get out of them, meaning the applicant? Because I do see that a lot, and it's something that bothers me. So I really do want to see more housing, more affordable housing units created, and I really don't have the answer to that, but I understand and I completely agree that there's got to be a better way to get that, to create that.
Thank you.
Your testimony and questions, and congratulations again on your
Thank you.
nomination. We'll take, I think at the end, we'll take opportunity for public to testify on both nominations. So for now, you're free to leave, and we'll call up our next nominee. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Committee. Thank you, Chair.
And if anybody from the public wants to sign up, they can fill out a slip with the Sergeant at Arms. We're gonna now move on to the Civilian Complaint Review Board. We're now gonna move on to Staten Island, Civilian Complaint Review Board. And I want to start by just saying a few words about it. The Staten Island delegation of the council has nominated Dr. Mohammed Khalid, a resident of Staten Island, for appointment by the council to serve on the Citizens Complaint Review Board. Civilian Complaint Review Board is an independent body charged with the duty to investigate complaints of misconduct by police officers towards the public. Board members are required to reflect the city's diversity. CCRB consists of 13 members, 5 appointed by the city council, 1 from each borough, 5 appointed by the mayor, 1 appointed by the public advocate, and 3 members with law enforcement experience designated by the police commissioner and appointed by the mayor. The members designated by the police commissioner are the only members who have law enforcement experience, who may have law enforcement experience. CCRB has a civilian staff responsible for conducting investigations of complaints received by the board. The CCRB's jurisdiction is limited to complaints claiming excessive force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, or use of offensive language. Pursuant to rules established by the CCRB, the board operates in panels of at least 3 members. CCRB's findings and recommendations with respect to a complaint and the basis therefore must be submitted to the police commissioner. In all such cases where a finding or recommendation has been submitted, the police commissioner is required to report to the CCRB any action taken with respect to that complaint. In all cases where the police commissioner intends to impose a lesser penalty than recommended by the CCRB, the police commissioner must exclude an explanation of how the final disciplinary outcome was determined. All CCRB members are eligible for compensation on a per diem basis. Current per diem rate is $315. Today's nominee, Dr. Khalid, previously served on the CCRB during the term of Mayor Bloomberg. If appointed by the council, would serve on the remainder of a 3-year term that expires on July 4th, 2025. If you can please join us at the table. And I want to welcome Dr. Khalid. Congratulations on your appointment/reappointment. If you can, just please raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee and in answer to all council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize you if you'd like to make an opening statement, and then we'll follow that with questions.
Good afternoon, Chairman Powers and members of the City Council. My name is Dr. Mohammed Khalid. It is a great honor and pleasure to be here. I came to the United States in 1972 from Pakistan as an immigrant with a degree as a dentist from one of the schools there, and then attended New York University Dental School and got my license in 1977. Professionally, I'm a dentist, but currently practicing in Staten Island since 1977. Beside my profession, I'm a civic leader in Staten Island for the last 30 years, serving as the president of the 2 large civic associations as a volunteer, the Iron Hill Civic Association, which covers the Toad Hill and Dongan Hills Colony section of Staten Island, with a population of about 5,000 people. The other association is the Pakistani Civic Association of Staten Island, where we have close to 10,000 population. These associations are for the purpose of solving the issue of the quality of life. I have served also in the state government. I was appointed in 2005 by then Governor George Pataki to a 6-year term as a member of the Minority Health Council, State of New York. I finished my 6-year term in 2011. In 2003, I was appointed by Mayor Bloomberg as a member of the Charter Revision Commission. In 2005, again, Mayor Bloomberg appointed me to Civilian Complaint Review Board, which I served 9 years and few months. That is where I learned the process of entering the complaint by the public and ending with the 3 members panel to render our judgment. This time around, I have been asked by my City Council delegate of Staten Island if I would like to serve again, to which I said I will, it will be a great pleasure to serve again on CCRB. I'd like to thank Minority Leader of the City Council, Joe Borelli, Member of the City Council, Kamala Hanks, and Councilman David Carr for their trust and confidence in recommending me to be appointed to the CCRB board. At this time, I'm ready to answer any question.
Thank you, and again, congratulations on your nominations, renomination here as well. You had served under Mayor Bloomberg, have taken a bit of a break, and now are up for a reappointment by the Staten Island delegation, who have very nice things to say about you and your nomination. But I wanted to just talk about, can you talk about your kind of desire to serve on the board again, and what you hope to accomplish if appointed again, and receive the advice and consent of the council? And then beyond that, there's a lot of attention on the CCRB, often even more recently, including some of the vacancies here. Can you talk about work you like in the similar vein of what you like to accomplish? Talk about the work that you see as important to the CCRB at this particular moment, relative to even when Mayor Bloomberg was in office, and if there's any sort of functions or forms of that agency that you'd like to see changed, or you'd like to see improved upon if you were to rejoin it.
I see a lot of stuff in the press that there are certain things which are which is more concern to me as well, that there are issues of bypassing the judgments, decisions, not having enough resources for the people working there. I think it will be a good thing that community relations with the NYPD will really help, and we have to find the ways why there is so much complaints and the reason behind it. There should be some more education, some more advertisement about what is the reason behind it. And I think that in every profession there is a continuing of education. So I suggest, I don't know who will do it, the city council, but or the mayor will do it. I think the police officers should also be given a training, a continuing education training regarding the CCRB issue, what their life will be impacted by. At the same time, we can also, public can be educated in various ways by the media and all that, that they should also respect the NYPD. So the community, I know in Staten Island, we have very good relationship with the police department, and the result is that there is not much CCRB coming in Staten, and although I have to look at, I'm not there yet. So I think that both can work together, and at the same time, the laws has to be applied in both the cases for equality of the NYPD and for the equality of the public. So.
Thanks. During the Bloomberg administration, one of the issues that CCRB was dealing with frequently was related to stop, question and frisk, where I think nearly approximately 30% of CCR complaints were related to that. And obviously, there's been findings of that being unconstitutional and a violation of individual civil rights, which is in contrast to what I think that administration had at times defined and defended. And I know New Yorkers have very different and strong opinions about that issue in different directions. But do you believe that the administration then handled the CCR complaints, properly handled CCR complaints about stop and frisk? Can you share with us your feelings on that practice, and talk about the work CCRB did, particularly managing a large influx of complaints that came in during your last tenure on the board?
I think the stop and frisk issue, it was something at that time where Bloomberg wanted to probably see that maybe a good tool of preventing crimes and all this thing. But going back, I think that Mayor Bloomberg realized at a point that it was wrong thing, and he publicly went and he said that he apologized, that stop and frisk should have not been a issue, which there was 700,000 cases were there at that time. So I believe that stop and frisk can be done, but in a different way. We have body cameras now. There's other things that can be seen in doing this type of search which should not be illegal way of doing it. There's always stop, ask questions, and write down everything, and not searching everyone, stop and doing the frisk. So I don't believe that that's a good way of preventing any crime, unless it's necessary at some point.
I appreciate it. And can you talk about how that, during your last tenure there, how the board handled those cases in terms of workload? It seems like it was a tremendously high amount of cases that were coming in, and how you and your colleagues then attended to those. And then, we'll do that question, and then I'll move on to my next.
I think that the time I was on the board, we made sure that every case is investigated properly, and 3 board members will make a right decision. I didn't see that much problem at that time, and so I guess that if everything is done properly according to the law, then I don't think there'll be any problem. I do not know exactly how the board is working right now, because I'm out of circle for at least 10 years. But I hope that if I'm approved and I become member, I will make sure on my part that the CCRB does everything in a proper way according to the rules and laws of the city charter. And so that's what I think that will be something that I look forward to. If there is something I can do, I will be definitely part of making a better CCRB.
And obviously, CCRB is receiving complaints from individuals who at times have had serious allegations, or are making very serious allegations, or have had things that happen to them that are quite serious, and also will have police officers coming before you who the outcome of that case could have a tremendous impact on them with their life or and their career. How do you adjudicate those cases? And you in your experience, you of course have served on this before, but you will be seeing cases where you have 2 sides that have a lot at stake, perhaps is the best way to put it, and they are entrusting you and your colleagues to be fair and judicious, not necessarily not one-sided, to be able to see the cases clearly and be balanced. And while I do want to be clear that the colleagues in the council have praised your ability to be sort of fair and see the complicated nature of these cases, like, what can you talk to us about your experience or how we're gonna entrust that into you? And then second is that 3-person model that exists right now. Is that, in your experience, the best way to handle those cases? Is that the right number of people? In some cases, I think we've had recent reports of some of the vacancies leading to those not being able to be handled appropriately. But is that the right model? Have you found that to be effective in terms of judging and evaluating those cases?
I think, Chairman, when the case comes into the CCRB and is properly investigated through the investigators, through the senior investigators, through the legal counsels and all that, finally, we all read the cases. Every case comes in, is divided into groups. The panel of 3, which is one police department representative, one is the mayor representative, and one is the city council representative. We all 3 sit down and read the cases and make sure that 2 of us agree on a certain judgment that we want to render on a police officer. So I think that that's in my opinion, I think it's a very fair way of this way. Everyone is protected and everybody is doing what is supposed to be. And if one does not agree and two agrees, then that's what we follow. And I think that's a good system, unless, we change in different way. But since the structure of the CCRB is like that there are 15 members, I know when I was there, there was not, one member was not there as far as the, I think there were 5 from the mayor's office, 5 from the police, 3 from the police department, 5 from city council. I think there's one added now by the public advocate. So there are more members now. I don't know if that members also participate in a group. I really, at this time, I don't know. But I think that time, that certainly worked, because the 3 members, we asked questions from each other, we discussed the case, and that's where we made the decision. So I think that also there was in my time, there was a memorandum of understanding with our group and with Commissioner Kelly. And the cases which we were discussing with the Commissioner Kelly, ultimate the punishment goes from the police commissioner. So lately what I see in the press that CCRB cannot do certain cases because of budget cuts or whatever, other issues. And some cases were dumped from the police department because they couldn't make a decision. This was in the press, and I'm just quoting what. But I think that in both cases, if enough resources are given, and if there's a multiple cases of CCRB complaint, so the staff can handle that, and at the same time, we should have a good relationship with the NYPD council, so we can discuss issues. Because I see in the questioning that in one case, the chairman of the CCRB went public about a particular case. And I think, in my opinion, instead of going public, it's a better thing to communicate and ask questions from each other with the CCRB and NYPD, and ask why there's a delay in a particular case, instead of publicly announcing it. And I feel that it will be like an embarrassment to CCRB and to the NYPD when there is a communication channel should be open, that in this particular case, we need certain things to review it for our decision. So I think that that should be the case that we should follow as a model.
Thanks. And I just wanted to, I think you were touching on this a little bit, but who do you think should have the final say over discipline? The CCRB, or should the CCRB have final, when they make a recommendation to the police commissioner? Of course, there's protocols in place when they want to lesser the penalty or provide an explanation to CCRB. But do you think that final jurisdiction should stay with the police commissioner or should live within the CCRB itself?
I think in order to make a better judgment, it's my opinion that if this is an independent agency and making decisions on 33 or 34,000 police officers, and CCRB spend all their resources and all their employees to work through this investigative process, I think they should be revisiting the memo of understanding that certain cases we should have the ability to, as a CCRB independent agency, should solve those issues. Or sometime we need to discuss with the NYPD. So if the agency has the authority, I'm pretty sure it will be more effective. But again, I don't want to take away the previous memorandum of understanding. They can be revisited and discussed furthermore. That's what I think that.
Thanks. And we were joined by Councilmember Hudson here as well. There have been complaints in past of outcomes or proceedings being leaked out to the public or the press. I'm not sure if you had that experience. or not, but how does the CCRB prevent that from happening? And if you're there, how do you focus on strengthening processes to prevent that, or penalties, I guess, perhaps, to help prevent that?
Chairman, I would first do to ask the meeting with the staff, whole staff, and ask them the questions that why is such and such why is this kind of leak coming to the press and all this thing? Has to find the source and then dealt with them accordingly what the law permits us to do so. So I think that is the way that we have to find out who is trying to do something illegal. So we have to follow the law.
Thanks. You've also been joined by Councilmember Ayala. Oh, he's over there. We're going to hop into member questions as well. I'll go to Councilmember Brewer first, followed by Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you very much. My question is, now we have no, I mean, this is like, again, we're reading in the press, just like you are. We have no chair. I don't know if we have a quorum. Hopefully you will be joining. That will help the quorum. And so was that ever the situation during the Bloomberg administration where you didn't have a quorum and you didn't have a chair and therefore you can't conduct business?
No, there was never ever. This is the first time I also read in the press that the last meeting there was no quorum. And, said
And they have one today at 4 o'clock, actually. We'll see what happens.
So they could not have any quorum that time, last meeting, which is a monthly meeting. In Bloomberg time, when I was there for 9 years and few months, we always had the chair, and every time the meeting was with the full quorum and everything was done according to what the business of the day was.
Okay. And then there is the MOU is probably somewhat contentious between the police and the CCRB. Do you think as time goes on, does that need to be changed? It was a little disheartening to hear that recently the recent police commissioner dismissed 54 of the suggestions by CCRB. That was a big number, at least for what I could see. So my question is, again, this is past, not present, but do you think there are ways that could be tweaked, or is it just a question of more communication, which is what you've indicated earlier? Because this is a really important topic. It's also, I know I have friends on the board, it's very time consuming. This is not a go to a meeting and leave kind of board. You actually do the work. You're a working board.
Right.
And so my question is, do you think there are ways that, is it more than communication that has to improve between police department and CCRB, or do you think that there has to be a change to the memorandum of understanding?
I think the both cases has to be changed. I believe that in order to have the cases which is just be thrown out, and the agency has done all work on that, it's not fair, I think, to the public, it's not fair to the NYPD. If this agency is in existence, I believe in the beginning, it was installed in 1950. It's a small agency, but actually Mayor Dinkin installed it, I think, 25 years ago.
1989, I was there,
Yes.
part of the charter.
Yes.
I was there.
So it was made as an independent agency. I think this is a very sensitive matter between public and NYPD. NYPD protects us, all public, but at the same time, public has certain rights. I think there should be some change in memorandum as well, and give more power to the CCRB, because investigation is done in a very thorough way. So what the result comes out, and if that result is not implemented, then what is the purpose of the CCRB then?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now go to Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, Dr. Khalid.
Thank you so much.
I just have a couple of questions for you. Earlier this year, Mayor Adams asked Arva Rice to resign her position as CCRB chair after she criticized the NYPD for delaying its investigation into the fatal shooting of Kowalski Trawick. You were asked about Arva Rice's resignation in pre-hearing questions. You responded that you don't believe that the mayor interferes with the work of any city agency, quote, unless something goes wrong, end quote. Given the current state of the city and the leadership of the police department, it is concerning that a council appointee to an independent review board would have such deference for the mayor. What basis do you have for asserting that Arva Rice did something wrong?
I read in the press, I do not know what the details about her leaving or resignation or letting her go. I believe that as an agency, any agency in the city of New York, to my knowledge, it's not the right practice to just go to the public, go to the press, and talk about certain private issues, internal issues of the CCRB or NYPD, unless there is something wrong with it. So I beg to differ that if this was an issue of this case, which you just mentioned, I think there should have been more communication. Whatever Arva Rice wanted from the police department, the NYPD should have provided that. And so I do not know what condition happened that she went to the press and told that this was not provided by the NYPD. Therefore, she is looking to go to the press and tell that why is not happening. I don't know, you have to exhaust other issues, and I still believe that communication is the right way to do it. All my life, I've been a civic leader for 30 years in Staten Island. I have always communicated with people, and it solves issue better than going into the public and embarrassing the CCRB, NYPD as well. I truly believe that a mayor is head of the city of New York. So if there is some issues which comes to his attention, he should be able to guide the agency, or his employees should be able to guide the agency. So I really don't know what exactly was the issue. I read in the press about her resignation, and either I was let go or that particular
Okay.
case.
So let me just make sure I understand clearly, because you started your explanation stating that you don't think matters of internal affairs or particular matters pertaining to agencies should be evaluated based on what the press is reporting. But you said you're not familiar with the details of Arva Rice's case or situation, and that all you know was from what you read in the press. So can you just clarify for me which one is it? Are you
I'm not in the CCRB. I left about 9-10 years ago.
right? But you're stating that you're referring to the situation with Arva Rice as to what you've read in the press.
In the press.
And then at the same time, you're saying that one should not turn to the press to learn more about a particular case pertaining to a city agency. So I'm just unclear about, do you utilize the press to learn information, or do you not? Are
I
you
honestly-
recommending that people don't read reputable
I
press
think
sources,
that, I'm
or-
sorry, I think that in case of Arva Rice, I really do not know what internal matters were, that what it came to a point where she had to go to the press to gain what she was looking for. I really don't know.
But it is your claim that she embarrassed the CCRB and the NYPD, even though you don't know the details of the
No,
matter,
I don't
right?
know that, and I'm not using my word that, I'm saying not her particularly, but I'm just saying that it's not a good practice. I would not go to the press unless all other things are exhausted. So I'm not proposing that it's embarrassment to CCRB or to the police department. I think
Okay, that is what you just said, so I'm glad you clarified that. I'm just going to move on to my next question.
Sure.
Are you also aware that the mayor asked Corporation Counsel Sylvia Hines Radix to resign, allegedly because she objected to the law department defending a former police officer accused of sexual harassment?
I'm sorry again, I didn't.
Are you aware that the mayor also asked Corporation Counsel Sylvia Hines Radix to resign, allegedly because she objected to the law department defending a former police officer accused of sexual harassment?
I'm not really aware of that case. I'm sorry.
Okay, but you wouldn't necessarily believe that the mayor's interference with the leadership of the law department is evidence that Judge Radix did something wrong?
I really don't know the details, so I cannot really comment on something. So, forgive me on that. I
Okay.
only believe that the mayor is the elected official of the city of New York.
And so you
if
think
an-
he should have sort of unfettered jurisdiction over every single affair pertaining to the city of
No,
New
I
York?
don't believe that. I'm just saying in this particular case that when I said that I won't do a case like this and I don't think any agency in the city of New York, I have not seen that the agency will go public and talk about the issues of that particular agency. I mean, I have never seen DOI, Department of Investigation, publicly going in a press and saying that, this person should be doing that.
I'm sure they're bound by law, yeah.
So I do not know.
Department of
this-
Investigation, I would argue, operates very differently from many other city agencies. And just so that you know and that you're aware, many city agencies often feel like, or agency commissioners often feel like they can't speak out for fear of retaliation from someone like the mayor. And so sometimes the only opportunity they have to get information out is to go to the press or to somehow, share information other than through a more formal means. But with Arva Rice specifically, she's the head of the Urban League, and it wasn't a CCRB matter. So.
But she acted as a CCRB, am I correct, that when she went to the press about this particular Kowalski case?
She was criticizing an investigation that was not a CCRB matter.
What I read in the paper, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but I read in the paper that she went public about this particular case.
I don't believe that's our understanding.
Maybe I misunderstood, but again, I'm not saying that every matter should be going to the press, that if you can't get your results, but you should exhaust all other avenues before you go and the whole world has to know about which, if can be solved internally, then I think we should first try that. And if it doesn't work, then as an agency has to make a decision, what is the next step we should do to get.
Yeah. I think that I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I mean, I think everybody always probably, I would say for public servants and commissioners, certainly we would trust as New Yorkers that they are going through every option internally before taking maybe more risky attempts at solving particular issues. So I don't think it should be assumed that internal solutions haven't been sought out. But thank you for your answers.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any other members ask questions? Okay, thank you. Congratulations again on your renomination, and we will now move on to public testimony and ask folks. You're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all the members as well.
Thank you. We'll now open the floor to public testimony. Are there any members of the public who are signed up to testify? And we will check Zoom as well if we have anybody signed up to testify. I don't believe we do. Seeing no other one else to testify, the public hearing on this appointment is now closed. This concludes today's business. I'd like to thank the nominees and members of the public, my colleagues on the committee, council, and staff, and Sergeant at Arms. This meeting is hereby adjourned.